admit it. The Strange Tale of Depsey the Rabbit. Chapter 6. The Broadcasting Proposal. The morning dose had taken longer than usual to take effect. Depsey stood outside his house, a shabby abandoned motel at the edge of Cartoon City, watching the rift's distant glow pulse against the pre-dawn sky, while waiting for the familiar sensation of protection to settle over his shoulders like invisible armor. Depsey had purchased the Mountain View Motor Lodge just before Mr. Muffins disappeared. He had great plans to make a beautiful mansion, but after he did what he did to Muffins, he just lived there, never fixing it up, never tending to it. So it wasn't much. Peeling paint, flickering neon sign, rooms that smelled of industrial carpet cleaner and decades of transient desperation. The ink had finally kicked in. That bitter cold feeling spreading through his system and making the world feel manageable again. Controllable. The guilt and horror that threatened to surface each morning were pushed down into whatever dark corner of his mind the protection maintained, leaving behind only the comfortable numbness that allowed him to function. By the time he reached the Blame It on the Ink Playhouse, the executives' cars were already pulling away from the building and lining up in the parking lot. Expensive vehicles with tinted windows, driven with the kind of purposeful efficiency that suggested important business had been concluded. Westwart's distinctive burgundy sedan led the procession, followed by Vulture's sleek black coupe and several other cars he didn't recognize, vehicles that looked too sophisticated for the cartoon world's usual aesthetic sensibilities. Depsey walked by the queue of cars. "Human eyeballs!" drifted from one of the departing vehicles, the words carrying just clearly enough to reach his ears before the window rolled up. "Interdimensional cameras, absolutely fascinating," came from another, the voice trailing off as the car accelerated toward the main road. Westwart's window was down as his sedan passed the Playhouse entrance, and Depsey caught a fragment of his conversation with someone in the passenger seat. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. The viewing angles alone will revolutionize. The rest was lost to engine noise and distance, leaving Depsey with only disconnected phrases that made no immediate sense, but carried an undertone of excitement that made his fur stand on end. The Playhouse felt different somehow, too quiet, too empty, as if something significant had just concluded and left the normal world slightly off balance. Even the cartoon physics seemed less reliable, with shadows falling at angles that didn't quite match the morning sun, and colors appearing just slightly more saturated than they should be. The executive offices were on the third floor of the Playhouse, accessible through a private elevator that Depsey had never used in 20 years of employment. The brass buttons felt cold under his finger, and the elevator's ascent seemed to take longer than the building's height should have required. The doors opened to reveal a hallway that smelled of expensive cologne and something else, something metallic and sharp that made his nose twitch with instinctive unease. A maintenance cart was being wheeled toward the service elevator by two figures, Jane from the secretarial pool and Bob from janitorial services. Their faces were pale with barely controlled horror, but they moved with the resigned efficiency of people who had no choice but to comply. "Oh, Mr. Depsey," Jane whispered, her usual cheerful demeanor replaced by wide-eyed shock. Her hands trembled as she gripped the cart handle, knuckles white with tension. "We're just... the quarterly meeting. There was an incident." Bob the janitor, a nervous cartoon mop bucket who usually hummed while he worked, was conspicuously silent, his usual song replaced by terrified compliance. The white sheet draped over the cart's contents couldn't quite hide the unmistakable shape underneath. "Clean-up duty," Bob managed, his voice cracking. "Mr. Mystery says this kind of thing happens in high-pressure environments. Executive stress and all that." They hurried past him toward the service elevator, their obvious terror making it clear this wasn't part of their normal job descriptions. These weren't medical professionals. They were regular Playhouse employees forced to handle the aftermath of corporate violence. The mahogany doors were slightly ajar, revealing glimpses of the elegant conference room beyond. Depsey pushed them open and stepped inside, immediately noticing the dark stains on the burgundy carpet and the way the morning light seemed to avoid certain corners of the room. Mr. Mystery stood at the head of the massive conference table, calmly organizing papers, while two more terrified employees worked around him. Margaret, a secretary from the front desk, was frantically mopping dark spots from the mahogany surface with trembling hands, her usual professional composure shattered. Beside her, Dave from custodial services carefully folded white sheets with obvious revulsion, his face green with nausea as he tried not to look at what the sheets had covered. "Ah, Depsey," Mr. Mystery said without looking up from his paperwork, his voice carrying the same casual authority, whether he was discussing quarterly reports or standing in what was obviously the aftermath of violence. "Punctuality has never been your strongest quality." The terrified employees continued their work with the kind of horrified compliance that suggested they understood the consequences of refusing. Margaret's hands shook so badly she could barely hold the cleaning supplies, while Dave kept glancing toward the exit as if calculating his chances of escape. "I was delayed," Depsey said, his protective ink making the bloodstains on the carpet feel distant and manageable rather than horrifying. "My morning medication took longer than usual to take effect." "Thought management can be so time-consuming," Mr. Mystery replied with patient understanding, finally looking up from his papers with those red eyes that seemed to reflect light from sources that didn't exist. "Though I trust the protection remains adequate." The question carried undertones that made Depsey's stomach tighten despite his chemical insulation. "Yes, perfectly adequate. No problems at all." "Excellent." Mr. Mystery gestured toward a space where sleek, mysterious equipment that had been hidden beneath the white sheets. "I was just explaining our broadcasting initiative to your colleagues. Revolutionary technology. Unprecedented market expansion opportunities. The equipment looked far too sophisticated for the cartoon world's usual technical capabilities. Banks of switches and monitoring devices, transmission arrays that seemed designed for long-distance communication, screens that remained dark but somehow felt expectant. As the horrified employees finished uncovering the machinery with obvious reluctance, they carefully draped the white sheets over a form slumped in one of the leather chairs. Smithers, Depsey realized with the distant clarity that protective ink provided. The nervous junior executive's familiar shape was obvious even under the makeshift shroud. His characteristic fidgeting finally stilled. "Broadcasting," Depsey repeated, the word feeling heavy and ominous in his mouth despite not understanding its full implications. "The future of cartoon entertainment," Mr. Mystery confirmed, settling into Westwart's chair with casual authority while the terrified staff continued their cleanup around him. "Enhanced distribution methods, expanded audience reach, market penetration that transcends traditional geographical limitations." Margaret was now wiping down the mysterious equipment with the same cleaning supplies she'd used on the conference table, her face pale with terror as she tried not to think about what she was removing. Dave organized cleaning supplies with shaking hands, clearly desperate to finish and escape. "Smithers had concerns about the implementation timeline," Mr. Mystery continued conversationally, his red eyes drifting toward the shrouded form with mild interest. "Executive stress can be so problematic during periods of technological transition." The casual way he discussed Smithers' death, while terrified staff folded the man's clothes and personal effects into a small bag, made Depsey's protective ink work overtime to maintain his emotional equilibrium. This wasn't his first exposure to Mr. Mystery's business methods, but witnessing the aftermath of boardroom violence felt different somehow, more immediate, more personal. Dr. Dinglegreen has been expressing similar concerns, Mr. Mystery said, his voice taking on the measured tone of someone transitioning to more serious business. About performer reliability. Enhanced integration procedures work best with cooperative subjects. The frightened employees were nearly finished now, their work reduced to final details and equipment organization. Margaret clutched her cleaning supplies like a lifeline, while Dave kept glancing toward the door with obvious desperation. The conference room looked almost normal except for a few damp spots on the carpet and the lingering scent of cleaning products that couldn't quite mask the metallic undertones. Oculus has been experiencing outbursts, Mr. Mystery continued, consulting his papers with the efficiency of someone reviewing routine performance metrics. Breakthrough moments where his old personality surfaces unexpectedly. Dr. Dinglegreen finds this problematic. Depsey remembered Oculus's desperate voice breaking through the mechanical compliance during his enhancement maintenance. "Help me! Someone please help me! I can't stop seeing. They're making me watch things, horrible things. Outbursts like that are dangerous," Mr. Mystery said with patient certainty, his red eyes fixing on Depsey with the intensity of someone making expectations very clear. "As you well know, Depsey, performers who resist integration tend to require alternative employment arrangements." The phrase hit him with familiar recognition. Alternative employment arrangements. The same euphemism that had appeared in his letters for 20 years, disguising elimination orders as career guidance. "I expect you'll be receiving correspondence about this situation very soon," Mr. Mystery continued, his voice carrying the casual authority of someone discussing routine scheduling. "The Rift provides such excellent opportunities for performance consultation, particularly for enhanced performers who demonstrate integration difficulties." Another letter. Another trip to the Rift. Another colleague who trusted him enough to follow him to that isolated location where accounts were settled permanently. But this time it would be Oculus, the six-eyed performer whose desperate plea for help had revealed the horror beneath Dr. Dinglegreen's enhancement procedures. "Speaking of performance consultation," Mr. Mystery said, his tone shifting to something almost conversational, "what do you think of Felicia Figtree?" The question seemed to come from nowhere, but Depsey felt his protective ink surge with unexpected emotion. Felicia Figtree, the rising star who'd been replacing established performers throughout the studio, whose unnatural stage presence and obvious enhancement made her everything he despised about the new direction of cartoon entertainment. "She's ambitious," Depsey said carefully, though his voice carried more venom than he'd intended. "Indeed," Mr. Mystery agreed with obvious satisfaction. "Quite talented. Enhanced integration has been remarkably successful with her particular physiology. Dr. Dinglegreen considers her one of his finest achievements, but she needs something. Only you can give her." The terrified staff were packing up their cleaning supplies now, desperate to escape. Margaret's hands still trembled as she gathered her materials, while Dave moved with the jerky efficiency of someone who wanted nothing more than to flee. The boardroom looked almost normal, except for the shrouded form of Smithers and the gleaming broadcasting machinery that dominated the space where quarterly reports usually lived. "It would be nice to get you two together sometime," Mr. Mystery continued, with the casual tone of someone discussing social arrangements. "Perhaps for a consultation session. The Rift location provides such privacy for professional discussions." The suggestion hit Depsey with sudden, unexpected enthusiasm. For the first time in 20 years of elimination work, he felt genuine desire rather than resigned compliance. Felicia Figtree, with her mechanical perfection and enhanced abilities, represented everything that had made his own natural talent obsolete. The idea of leading her to the Rift, of watching her fall into the swirling lights below, filled him with anticipation rather than guilt. "That sounds..." Depsey paused, recognizing the darkness in his own response, and feeling surprised by how natural it felt. That sounds like an excellent idea. Mr. Mystery's smile widened with predatory satisfaction, his red eyes reflecting something that might have been pride or amusement. I thought you might appreciate the opportunity. Professional development can be so fulfilling when it serves multiple purposes. Expect your correspondence within the week, Mr. Mystery said, gathering his papers with the satisfaction of someone whose meeting had concluded successfully. Both assignments, the integration problem and the consultation opportunity. I trust you'll handle both with your usual expertise. As the traumatized employees fled, and the boardroom returned to its elegant silence, Depsey found himself alone with Mr. Mystery and the covered body of a colleague who'd asked the wrong questions during a technological demonstration. The broadcasting equipment hummed quietly in the background, waiting for whatever enhanced performers would soon operate its mysterious functions. The future of cartoon entertainment, Mr. Mystery said with obvious satisfaction, gesturing toward the gleaming machinery. Revolutionary distribution methods that will change everything about how audiences experience our performances. Depsey nodded, though he didn't fully understand what broadcasting meant or why it required such sophisticated equipment. The important thing was that his work would continue, that his protection would remain secure, and that soon he would have the opportunity to eliminate two performers who represented everything he'd grown to hate about the new direction of the studio. For the first time in 20 years, he was looking forward to receiving that letter. The quarterly meeting had concluded successfully. Broadcasting implementation would proceed according to schedule. Enhanced performer integration would continue under Dr. Dinglegreen's supervision. And in a few days, Depsey would receive correspondence about professional consultations that would require trips to the Rift. Trips that only one participant would survive. Everything was perfectly normal at Blame It on the Ink Playhouse and Productions. Outside the boardroom windows, the Playhouse continued its normal operations, unaware that the future of cartoon entertainment had just been decided by corporate violence and technological demonstrations. Somewhere in the theater, Dr. Dinglegreen was probably already preparing enhancement procedures for the next wave of performers. Somewhere else, broadcasting equipment was being installed for trials that would begin very soon. And somewhere in Depsey's dressing room, two new letters were probably already waiting. One about Oculus's integration problems, and one about Felicia Figtree's consultation opportunities. Both would require the kind of professional expertise that Depsey had been developing for 20 years. Both would provide the satisfaction of eliminating performers who threatened his position in the evolving entertainment landscape. Everything was perfectly normal. Everything was exactly as it should be.